boy was only 6 when he began to speak of death. Not his future, his past. He said he had been murdered. He described the weapon in detail, a blade rusted and curved. He pointed to his neck and showed the wound that had taken his life. He told his parents the killer's face, the clothes he wore, even the sound of his voice. At first, they thought it was a child's fantasy, until he led them to a field beyond the village. There, beneath the soil, they found a body, broken, decayed, and lying exactly where the boy said it would be. The skull bore the same wound the boy had described. The weapon was still there, buried beside it. When confronted, the boy identified the killer without hesitation. A man who still lived in the village. A man who swore he was innocent. But how could a child know the details of a crime committed before his birth? And if he truly remembered his execution, whose soul was speaking through him? At first, his parents dismissed the stories as imagination. Children invent things. Children dream. But this was different. The boy spoke with detail too sharp for a fantasy. He described a house no longer standing. He recalled a path that had been overgrown for years. He named objects, an axe, a jug, a red scarf, that his parents had never owned. Yet older villagers confirmed had once belonged to another man. He never wavered in his account. He said his name had not always been what they called him now. He gave another name, one the villagers recognized, a name of a man who had disappeared years before, a man no one had seen since rumors whispered he'd been murdered. The boy said plainly, "That was me. I was killed." At first, the parents tried to hush him. They scolded him for frightening the neighbors. But the more they tried to silence him, the louder the memory spilled out. He drew the shape of the murder weapon in the dirt, a curved blade, chipped at the edge. He walked barefoot through the village, leading his father down paths he had never traveled before. At last, he stopped at a field, pointing to a patch of earth. "I am here." The ground was dug. Bones were uncovered. A skeleton, twisted, the skull split open with a wound exactly where the boy had described. And there, rusted but intact, lay the blade. The villagers gathered in horror. Some crossed themselves. Others backed away, refusing to look. For in that moment, the child's words were no longer a story. They were testimony. But the boy was not finished. He spoke of the man who had done it. He gave his name, his face, his voice. He described the moment in vivid detail, the anger in his killer's eyes, the blow that struck him down, the silence that followed. He pointed at a villager still alive, still walking among them, still insisting he was innocent. The accused denied everything. He spat on the ground, calling the boy a liar. But the villagers had already seen too much. The wound, the blade, the grave, it matched too perfectly. Whispers spread. What if the boy carried the dead man's soul? What if he had truly returned to accuse his killer? Fear grew like a sickness. Some villagers wanted to put the accused man to trial. Others warned that listening to the child was dangerous, that such things were not meant to be known. Still, the boy's voice carried weight far beyond his years. He spoke as if he remembered every detail of a life stolen, every second of a death endured. And the strangest thing of all, he carried the wound with him. A faint line across his neck, a scar he had been born with, now seemed like proof of his story. He touched it often as he spoke, saying, "This is where he killed me." For the villagers, the boundary between life and death had blurred. The child was no longer just a child. He was a witness from beyond, a voice of the murdered, an echo of the dead demanding justice. But justice is never clean. The accused man was dragged before the elders. He swore he was innocent. He begged, raged, wept. But every word he spoke fell against the boy's calm, unshaken memory. The boy repeated what he had seen, what he had suffered, what he had endured. And when he looked into the man's eyes, the villagers saw not a child, but something older, something returned. The accused was executed. Some said it was justice. Others whispered it was vengeance. But one truth unsettled them all. The boy had spoken, and death had obeyed. Yet afterward, the boy did not smile. He did not rest. He did not seem at peace. Instead, he asked a question that silenced the entire village. How many times must I die before it ends? The execution of the accused should have brought peace. Justice had been served, the murderer punished. But instead, the village felt no relief. The boy's words still lingered, heavy and sharp, as though the earth itself was listening. He did not stop speaking after the sentence was carried out. His memories continued, vivid as ever. He described the life he once had, the animals he tended, the arguments he quarreled, the family he missed. He spoke of debts unpaid, promises broken, feasts celebrated long before he was born. His parents listened in silence, unable to deny the impossible truth. This was not their child alone. This was someone else living inside him. At night, he woke screaming, clutching his throat. He said he could feel the blade again, feel the hot rush of blood, feel the darkness close in. His cries echoed through the house, keeping neighbors awake. Some wept for him. Others whispered that he was cursed. The elders grew uneasy. They had given weight to his testimony, and it had ended in blood. But what if this was not justice at all? What if it was something far darker, an ancient spirit using the boy as a vessel for vengeance? Rumors spread. Some said the scar on his neck was not just a birthmark, but a seal, a mark of his return. Others feared that if he remembered one death, he might remember more. A cycle of dying and returning, over and over, dragging the village into endless reckonings. And then came the second vision. The boy claimed he remembered not only his murder, but the days before it. He described a meeting in the marketplace, voices raised, threats made. He recalled the exact words shouted before the killing blow. Elders confirmed those arguments had indeed been witnessed years before, though no one had spoken of them since. The boy knew too much. His memories were not fading. They were growing sharper, wider, deeper. The villagers began to fear him. Children avoided him. Mothers pulled their daughters close when he passed. Some spat at his feet, calling him a ghost. Others crossed themselves, whispering prayers. His parents begged him to stay silent, to forget, but forgetting was impossible. For the boy's memories were not only of the life he lost, they were of the death itself. Again and again he described it, the sound of his own scream, the taste of blood in his mouth, the moment his knees buckled. He told it not as a nightmare, but as a memory, etched into him with the permanence of a scar. And each time he spoke it, those who listened felt a chill, as if they too had witnessed the murder. Fear turned to suspicion. Some villagers wondered, what if he was not only remembering, but summoning? What if by speaking of his death, he was binding them to it, dragging them closer to the curse of his return? The more he remembered, the more the village began to unravel. The boy himself seemed to change. His eyes, once bright with childish curiosity, now carried the weight of age. He spoke less of toys and games, more of debts and betrayals. He asked questions no child should ask. Why was I killed? Why was I betrayed? Why does no life last? His parents, once protective, now trembled before him. They whispered in the night of leaving the village, of fleeing to where no one knew the boy's story. But fear bound them too. Fear that wherever he went, his memories would follow, and new bodies would be unearthed. And then, another revelation. The boy claimed he had seen more than his own killer. He said he remembered standing above his own grave, watching his body decay, watching the seasons turn. He remembered the whispers of those who passed by, the laughter of those who forgot him, the silence of those who pretended he never existed. He remembered being forgotten, and that, he said, was the worst wound of all. The villagers, once fascinated, now recoiled. To speak to the boy was to brush against death. To look into his eyes was to see the grave reflected back. He was no longer just a child with memories. He was a mirror, forcing everyone to face what waits for them. The execution had not ended the haunting. The boy's words spread beyond the village. Travelers carried the story down roads and into markets, where merchants repeated it to curious crowds. Priests argued over it. Philosophers debated it. Was this proof of reincarnation? Or was it a darker truth, that the dead could return, demanding payment from the living? But in the village itself, the fascination had turned to fear. The boy no longer seemed like a child. He walked with a solemnity too heavy for his age. He spoke with the cadence of a man twice, 3 times older. His laughter had vanished. His games were abandoned. And when other children approached him, he would only watch them in silence, as though remembering what it was like to be young and alive, and knowing it was no longer his. He spoke more often of betrayal. He described faces in the crowd who had once mocked him in his past life. He called out villagers who, years ago, had stood by and done nothing as he was struck down. He accused them with calm precision, describing moments they thought had been forgotten. And each time the accused would pale, for his memory was flawless. Soon, no one in the village felt safe. The elders who had once praised his gift now feared it. They asked him to stop. They begged him to let the dead rest. But the boy refused. "I cannot rest," he said, "because I was not allowed to die in peace." The more he remembered, the more the village unraveled. Neighbors accused neighbors. Old sins were dragged back into daylight. Secrets long buried were spoken by a voice too young to know them. Husbands glared at wives. Brothers turned against brothers. Friends became enemies, all because the boy's memory made silence impossible. And then the visions changed. The boy began to describe not just what had happened, but what was still happening. He said he could see the body in the earth, rotting, bones shifting, worms feeding. He described the ground cracking, the skull caving, the ribs splitting. His words carried the detail of someone who had lived through decomposition itself. When he spoke, Villagers swore they smelled damp soil. Blood turned to dust. The stench of death itself carried in his breath. People began to avoid him. Doors locked when he passed. Candles were snuffed. Parents told their children not to look him in the eyes. To see him was to see your own grave. His parents, torn between love and terror, grew desperate. They begged priests to intervene. Holy water was sprinkled, blessings whispered, prayers repeated. But the boy only laughed softly and said, "Do you think words can wash away blood? Do you think prayers can close a wound that never healed?" One priest suggested exile. Another warned that exiling him would only spread the curse beyond their walls. Others said he must be silenced permanently. The elders refused to speak it aloud, but the villagers began to murmur. Perhaps the boy himself must die before his memories poisoned them all. But death, it seemed, was no solution. For the boy began to tell them something new. He claimed this was not his first return. He had lived before the murdered man. He had died other deaths, felt other wounds, worn other faces. He spoke of drowning in a river, of burning in a fire, of starving in a cell. He said each time he returned, each time he carried fragments of every death with him. The villagers listened in horror. It was not one soul speaking through the boy. It was many. He was not merely a victim reborn. He was a vessel of death itself, a mirror of all lives ended too soon. His scar grew darker. Some swore it split open at night, a wound that wept blood while he slept. Others said they heard him whisper names in his dreams, names of the dead, names of those who had not yet been born. The fear became unbearable. The village turned on itself. Families abandoned their homes, fleeing to distant towns. Farmers refused to till the cursed soil. Merchants closed their stalls. The boy's house was marked with symbols of protection, daubed in ash and blood. But the marks faded, and still he spoke. And then, the most terrifying moment of all. The boy led his parents once more beyond the village. He pointed to another patch of earth, untouched, unmarked. He said, "Here is where I will die next." They begged him to stop, but he stood there silently, his eyes calm, as though he had already seen it unfold. And when they dug at the spot, they found not bones, but a shallow pit waiting. The village realized then that this was not only about the past. The boy's curse was not memory alone. It was prophecy, and prophecy demands fulfillment. The villagers could no longer agree on what the boy was. Some said he was a miracle, proof of life beyond death. Others swore he was a curse, a vessel of restless spirits that would never let the living be free. But one truth united them all. They were afraid. The elders gathered in secret. Voices clashed, hushed but trembling. Some demanded the boy be banished, sent away before his words poisoned them further. Others argued banishment would only spread the plague of his memory to new lands. A few, their faces pale with fear, whispered the unthinkable. The boy must be killed. His parents heard the rumors. His mother wept, clutching him at night, whispering prayers into his scar. His father grew cold and distant, torn between protecting his son and protecting the village that now hated them. The house became divided, love cracking under the weight of dread. Meanwhile, the boy's visions grew sharper. He spoke of the shallow pit he had shown them. He said he saw faces around it, shadows standing above him. He described the blade that would cut him, the voices that would shout, the silence that would follow. He did not speak with fear. He spoke with certainty. Every word was a knife in the hearts of those who heard him. It was not just memory now. It was inevitability. The boy carried the future in his mouth, and it sounded exactly like his past. The villagers began to avoid him completely. His family was shunned, left without food, without trade. Doors slammed at their approach. Children spat on the ground when they passed. Some threw stones. His mother shielded him, but her arms grew weaker with every passing day. His father looked at him as though he were already a ghost. One night, a group of men came to the house. They carried ropes. They carried blades. They told the father the truth he already knew. The boy must die. If he lived, the prophecy would consume them all. If he died, perhaps the curse would end. But when they entered the house, the boy was waiting. He did not cry. He did not beg. He only touched the scar on his neck and said, "You cannot stop what already happened." The men faltered. Fear gripped them. Some fled into the night, convinced they had heard not a child but the voice of death itself. Others remained, trembling, torn between duty and dread. The father fell to his knees. His face was pale, his eyes empty. He asked the boy one question. "If I kill you, will you come back?" The boy did not hesitate. "Yes." The men left in silence. No one dared lift the blade, but the prophecy still lingered. The pit still waited, and the boy still spoke. He began naming names. Who would stand at his grave? Who would carry the weapon? who would turn their face away. He spoke of it like a story already written, and those he named began to break, their lives unraveling under the weight of a fate they could not escape. The village was no longer living. It was waiting for the boy to die again, waiting for his prophecy to be fulfilled, waiting for death to walk among them, wearing the face of a child. The village no longer worked, no longer traded, no longer prayed. It waited. Every day felt like the pause before a blade falls. The boy spoke less now, but when he did, his words were heavier, final, like stones thrown into water. He no longer described only his own murder. He spoke of others' deaths, whispering to neighbors how they would fall, how their bodies would lie, who would weep for them. Some ignored him, some fled. Others, too terrified to doubt, began preparing graves in advance. His prophecy spread like a disease. Mothers refused to let their children near him. Men carried charms, marked their doors with ash, begged priests for protection. But none of it mattered, because what the boy described always came to pass. A farmer stumbled into his own well after the boy had spoken of it. A woman's child choked on bread the very day he had said she would lose him. These were not vague warnings, they were exact. The villagers realized then that his words were not just memories, not just prophecy. They were execution. The boy did not need to wield a weapon. His tongue was enough. His parents withered under the burden. His mother begged him to stop, pleaded with him not to speak, but silence was impossible. His memories poured out like blood from a wound. His father no longer looked at him as a son, but as a stranger who had taken their child's face. The elders gathered one last time. They debated in whispers whether to end it themselves. Some swore killing him would only bring him back, angrier, stronger. Others said doing nothing would doom them all. The boy's shallow pit, the one he had shown them weeks before, was now burned into everyone's mind. Some claimed they dreamed of it, dug open, waiting, calling to them. And the boy himself changed. His small body seemed older, his eyes sunken, his voice low, steady, not the trembling tones of a child, but the weary weight of the dead. He walked to the pit again and sat beside it, tracing its edge with his hands. "It is almost time," he whispered. The village could no longer bear it. Families fled in the night, abandoning their homes, leaving food rotting in cellars. Those who remained circled the boy's house like vultures circling prey, waiting for the moment the prophecy claimed him. And then the night came. The boy rose from his bed, touched his scar, and walked into the field. His parents followed, hollow-eyed, too weak to stop him. Villagers emerged from their homes, torches in hand, pulled by a dread they could not resist. They formed a circle around the pit as if answering a call. The boy looked at them all and spoke. "You were here before. You will be here again." His words froze them, for in that moment, none could tell whether he was remembering the past or describing the present. The lines had blurred. Life, death, memory, prophecy. It was all one endless cycle. And as the villagers watched, the boy knelt by the pit that waited for him, calm, steady, as though death was not the end but simply the next repetition of a story that would never stop. The villagers swore they saw it happen. The boy knelt at the pit and laid his hand against his scar. He whispered one last time about the blade, the wound, the silence that followed. Some said he fell on his own, as if the memory itself struck him down. Others claimed a shadow moved through the crowd, unseen but swift, and the boy simply collapsed. However it happened, the end was the same. His small body lay in the pit he had foretold. The scar split open. Blood ran exactly as he had described. The villagers, pale and trembling, covered the grave, but none felt they had buried a child. They felt they had buried something far older. And yet, as the soil closed over him, a deeper terror took hold. If he had remembered once, what was to stop him from remembering again? If death could not silence him before, why would it now? For days afterward, the village was silent. No laughter, no trade, no prayer. Every sound felt like blasphemy. Parents hushed their children, terrified that one day another would speak with the same voice, the same memories. Farmers avoided the field. Some swore they still heard whispers there, faint, childlike, repeating the words, "I was killed." The curse was not in the boy, it was in the cycle. And the question that haunted them was not whether he would return, but whether they themselves would. If he could carry his execution from one life to the next, what memories waited in their own bones? What wounds might follow them into another birth? What sins would return to demand reckoning? The villagers had killed the murderer. They had buried the boy, but they could not bury the thought that death was not an ending. It was a doorway, and once you have walked through, you may find yourself dragged back again, carrying scars no grave can hide. So ask yourself this: if you closed your eyes tonight and never woke, what memory would you carry into your next life? And if someone one day pointed to you, child or stranger, friend, or enemy, and said, "You are the one who killed me," what would you say? Because silence will not save you, and death may not forget.